Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good late night to all of you, wherever it may be. It is the Retro Yuki for the Retro Yuki Game Development Channel, giving you guys a brand new series titled Learn RPG Maker MV. In this series, my goal is to give you guys a look at how to develop your first game with RPG Maker MV, mostly with no code and no coding, and by in-depth lessons. We're going to be touching, in this series, we'll be touching on the basics. We'll be talking about the database, variables, common events, and other aspects of game development. In this first episode, we're going to be touching on the user interface, the UI. So let's go ahead and get started with our lesson for today. And as you can see, we have RPG Maker MV open. Now, as you can also see, I already have maps and all this good stuff, because I've been developing this game for a while. But the UI in any game you develop with RPG Maker MV is the same. So let's go ahead and take a look at each one specifically. In particular, our top menu here. All this good stuff is right here waiting for you to play with. Oh yes. Oh, and also the bottom side as well. So let's go ahead and get started. First, you'll notice our icons here. So let's go ahead and take a look at what each one does. So this is your new game tool, your open project tool, your save tool, your cutting tool, your copy tool, your paste tool, then your undo tool. So these are your basic icons or basic shortcuts. Anytime you do Microsoft Word and all that good stuff, they're your basic ones. Here is where RPG Maker MV comes into play. You have your mapping tool, which allows you to map based on what you've chosen here, let's say the grass, and the pencil to allow us to draw some grass on the map, right? So you draw grass and all that good stuff. We can also draw the grass with our rectangle tool like this, our ellipse tool like this, and our flood tool like this. All right? Then we have our shadow pen. The shadow pen allows us to add shadows to our mapping in places like, let's say, where there's shade. For example, you may have noticed that this area has a little shadow. That's because there are between two buildings, and usually between two buildings, you usually have some sort of shade. Therefore, I use my shadow pen to create the image, create the shade that you have here. Gameplay wise, usually it doesn't mean anything unless you put a mechanic for it. But in a design standpoint, it adds something to the style of the game. It shows that you care about your game. Alright? That's a shadow pen for you. Then we have the magnify, the demagnify, and the one-to-one tool. This one-to-one tool only works if you magnified it past the one-to-one function, which is right here. You zoom in, zoom out, zoom in again. Then you can use one-to-one. Okay. Now we have one of the two biggest parts of our game development. The first part is the eventer, with the event tool, which is this. We'll talk about the event tool in our next episode when we talk about eventing. But first, let's talk about the database. This big boy is going to be your big boy when it comes to game development, RPG Maker MV, and the upcoming RPG Maker MZ. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. This is where all the good stuff happens, right? Your characters or your actors, your classes, your skills, your items, everything that you need for your game is right here. In this series, we're going to be learning how to create items, weapons, armor. We're also going to be adding effects to them and traits. We're also going to be talking about the node tags later on. We'll talk about those later down the series when we start talking about like the database stuff. That's coming up later on. Okay. Then we have the plugin manager. The plugin manager is also another feature of our game development that we are going to be using to our advantage in this series. This allows us to change the game in a way that allows us to add features. For example, everybody's favorite feature from Final Fantasy, the active time battle, can be added thanks to a plugin. And by the way, that plugin developer is by the name of Yanfly. Everybody knows him, or her, or them, or they. I've used Yanfly plugins for a while, so I love Yanfly plugins. Believe it or not, I have developed plugins in the past, but mostly those are for like basic games with no other plugins interfering, because I'm still working on how to make it work with Yanfly. But we'll talk about that another day. The next tool is the sound test. The sound test is a tool where you guys can test the sound, make sure everything is working right. You can also play some music or play some sound effects. I would actually go here. I would go here for a few reasons. Number one, because you want to make sure you play the right sound effect for different scenarios in your game. Number two, you want to make sure you don't use the default sounds. Okay? I think menu 6 is like the menu sound for the main game. I believe it's 6 or 4. I'm going to test it out now, but I know for sure one of those. Right? Or you can also develop your own music and import it into your game. I'm actually thinking of doing that for my game development as well, but not until I get to the main games. Okay? Then we have the event searcher. Now, I believe event searching started on RPG Maker 2003. If I'm wrong, please correct me. But the event searcher allows you to search for events like this. Let's just say if you want to search for it, where is that map at? Where on the map? It's event number 41 in this case, and the map is called Kindness Village. The page is 1, and the position is 113. 113, if we go by our mapping here, let me go ahead and close this. So your position is 0, 0. On the bottom right corner of your screen, around here, the position is 0, 0, 1. And you go down by 13 squares. And there it is. There's our map. There's our event. All right. You can also name events, but we're not going to talk about that until next episode. Okay. Now let's talk about the resource manager. The resource manager allows us to check out our resources that we have for our game. For example, the battle bags, the characters, all this good stuff is here for you. Now you may have noticed a particular item called DLC. DLC is downloadable content based on the software. Now, this is not downloadable content for the game, okay? Keep that in mind. There's downloadable content for the software. For example, RPG Maker MV has some for you. So if you want to use that, you guys can do so. But you have to look for it, okay? I'm going to open this for, let's say, Let's just open that. So I added something from the thing here, alright? Now I'm gonna delete that. But you guys can actually do that for the event, for the source manager. Okay? Then we have the character generator. The character generator allows us to create a brand new character asset for our game. Now make sure though to save your work. Let's take a look at the character generator. Here we go. Our character generator allows us to create a character, either male or female, or a child character or kid character, in this case, based on parts. As you can see, we have the nose, the tail, wing, floating, all that good stuff is here for you. Now, if you are going to try to find custom made parts by the community, I would actually go there, but please make sure to credit those who deserve credit. I mean, excuse me. Please make sure to credit them, not the other way around. Okay? Make sure to credit those who created the assets for you. Now, if it's by RPG Maker MV themselves, I would say credit them anyway, even though it's not necessarily required. But if you're downloading the assets from another character, another person, you have to credit them. It's required, okay? Especially if you're going for the commercial project. Okay, commercial meaning you make money. All right. To save your character, all you have to do is go to different parts. You save your face, character's face. All right, the character's face. You just do all that good stuff. Make sure to save settings though, just in case you need to go back and change some stuff. Okay. We can also do kids or child characters. You can also do the same thing with male and female. The only difference is kid characters are not allowed to have tails or wings, I believe. That's what I noticed. They are not allowed to have tails or wings, which is sad because I want to see characters like that with wings and tails. That's actually pretty awesome, my opinion. But this is me. And finally, we have the playtester, which means play your game. All right. So if we playtest this now, I am going to playtest this now. Is this a regular playtest? This is a regular playtest. No, not that one. It's going to be. There we go. We playtest this now. Go to that window. If we play this as now, anything that you already did, it's going to be in play. Now, because I did not put the shadow pen in play, or did not save it, it's not shown here, okay? So anything that you have done so far, then you can go ahead and test it out. I highly encourage playtesting, and we're going to explain why when we get into the later parts of the series. That's just a little bit of the game I'm developing, by the way. Little taste. Now I want to go over to the left side of your excuse me. I do want to go over some parts that I did not go over because they were hidden in the menu toolbar. The first one is File. Now, File has new open close save, but below that has Deployment and Steam Management. If you go to Deployment, I'm going to save the game anyway. You should see a window like this. This window allows you to export your game into the following five platforms: Windows, Mac OS X, Linux, Android or iOS, and web browsers. I do want to make note of one particular category, and that is the Android and iOS. If you guys want to start putting your game into phone, you're going to have to go through some extra steps if you're going to go buy it on the market. Excuse me, set it up, sell it on the market. You have to go through some Apple stuff, some Android stuff. I'm not going to go over that today or in this series, but it is out there that you do need to be warned that you have to follow the Android rules and the iOS rule. Apple. Okay? Make sure you follow the rules. And once you're done, but with Windows, OS X, and Linux, you'll be okay. Web browsers is more for like web servers or like that, something like that, okay? That's how you deploy the game. Now, Steam management is a little bit of a different story. Steam management is those of you who want to like get your game on Steam. Steam as in the software Steam, where you buy your computer games. You have to agree to their rules. You also have to make sure that your game can get green light, because I believe that's what it's called. You have to have green light in order to have good game. Okay, like it's approved. I would not start off with green light with Steam management though. Don't do that. At least not at the beginning when you're starting your first game. The reason why is because most of the time, if you're starting out with your first game, you're going to use RTP stuff or runtime package. With everything you see in this map is runtime. I'm gonna tell you guys right now, runtime. Okay, don't do that if you're going for Steam. Now, if you get lucky, now that does not mean that games with RTP doesn't be good. It's just that it's frowned upon when it comes to like professional game development. Okay? Now, if you make your custom music, custom this, custom that, but you still have the runtime package, you might get luck. You might get away with it. Okay, but for the most part, you're not gonna get away with it. It just so happens that for my first game, I am using my RTP, but I do plan to make custom music. Okay, so word of advice: if you're going to publish your first game, just go for Windows, Mac OS X, or Linux, and put it on something like Indie Expo or Game Jolt. We'll be talking about how to do that more when we get to that episode. Okay. Finally, I do want to touch on the left side here, the mapping and the region and all this good stuff. This is called your tile set. Tile sets allow you to select one and place it on the map using a mapping tool like that. That's why I showed you earlier. There are a few categories of tile sets in RPG Maker MV. Future, outside, inside, cave, dungeon, all that good stuff. They're also categorized by ABC. There's like a few sections for each particular tile. So for example, we have A. In A, we have this grass. Not this one. Grass. This grass texture, this grass tile that we can use like this. Or we have this wall like this. B and C are the same but with different assets. The one I want to focus on in terms of the mapping here in the tile set is R. R stands for region. regions allow you to do a few things. First off, you might use this as a mapping tool where you want to map something like planning tool, which is actually a good idea if you think about it. For example, let's just say in region 1, let's just put this area under region 1 for the sake of today's example. Let's just say that in region 1, you place all this stuff. Let's just say that in region 1, you want to build something where you want to map something like a housing area, like a housing project, or like a park or something. You can do that when you start in development, okay? But there's another reason why regions are important though. In certain plugins that we're going to showcase, you can actually force, there's actually a few reasons why you want to use regions. But one of them is being for plugins. Some plugins will be putting in regions in terms of events. You can also use this for events. For example, let's say that you do not want anybody passing region 1. And let's say this whole area is now region 1. Anybody caught outside region 1, I'm going to say this, is out of the park, if you will. Okay? Out of the village. I'm just using that as an example. So region 1 is like a safe zone. Okay? So you put a message like, oops, you're outside of the village. Then you go back in, then it's going to be like a message saying, welcome to the village, or something like that. Okay? The other reason why you want regions, if you want, is some for random encounters. And we'll be talking about that later on as well. But basically, let's say, for example, region 2. In region 2, we're going to spawn bats. And in region 1, to say for example here, we're going to spawn slimes. So that's what we're going to have. But remember, once you hit this part, you're going to go to bats. So anytime you put a random encounter here, it's bats. And anytime you put a random encounter here, it's slimes. And anywhere outside of that is up to the developer. All right? Then we go downstairs to our mapping areas, our maps themselves. So I have some maps here because I've been developing this game for a while, and I'm happy to say that the mechanic build of this game will be coming out soon. But I do want to make sure you guys understand there are templates out there for you guys to use. Just in case you need some inspiration. To get your templates, you want to make a new map, right click, new, actually not new, actually right click, load, and you're going to get this window. This window allows you to load a template of a map, just in case you need some inspiration. Now, you can actually use these maps to your advantage, and we're going to do so by using there's so many maps in here, but let's just use the tower. Actually, no. Let's use this shop district as a template. So there we go. We have our shop district. And as you can see, we have new tiles because it just happens to be a futuristic map. Right? So what we have here is the shop district. Now, it's already completed because it's based on the software. However, you do not want to leave this actually unedited. What do I mean by that? Because RPG Maker developers, watchers or players, want to experience a game through the developer's eyes. If they see this without edits, they're not going, well, most of the time they're not going to play. Okay, now if it's a mechanic build, that's a different story. But if it's like a final game, like it's final, like final stages like that, and they see this unedited, most of the time they won't play because it just shows to you, it tells them that you did not put a lot of effort into the game because you see you use template. Now let's just say, for example, you decided, see if I can find this tile here for the world. I think it's an A here. Yeah, I think it's this one. Let's see. Yeah, no, it's not. Actually, no, it's not. Yeah, because I'm seeing lines. Okay, let's just say I'm doing this though, for example purposes. You can see now I'm editing the map, which is okay. You edit the map, you're fine. Because now it shows you that you want to try to change the map a bit. Alright? It shows to the viewers and orders you are trying to make something out of something. That's what you want to do here. So let's just say instead of like businesses in this area, instead of businesses, why don't we make a park in this area instead? Or like a place for gathering or something, like a plaza, if you will. Then you can go ahead and do that. Now that you edited the map, you're okay. And let's say that there's a wall here, and you can enter it here or here if you want. Okay. Now keep in mind, you want to make sure though that you match the tile accordingly. Okay. If it's inside, leave it inside. If it's outside, leave it for outside. All right. And then we're going to make a way in there. I think this one again. We're going to have a place for our characters to hang out. And there you go. You just made a place for the characters to hang out in this area. Congratulations. Now, mapping, of course, is one part of the game. Development. The other part is actually developing the game. Alright? So hopefully you guys learned something today in this tutorial. In our next episode, we're going to be talking about eventing. We're going to start eventing our very first events and how to do so. Alright? Hopefully you guys enjoyed. And we will see you guys on the next episode of Learn RPG Maker MV with the Retro Yuki. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.